Namaste friends. Russia invaded Ukraine on February 24th of 2022 and there is a war going on in Europe. I want to weigh in on that astrologically. And before I do that, one caveat. When it comes to the charts of individuals, there are some clear teachings from Rishis. But even there, we cannot make predictions with 100% confidence because astrology is a probabilistic science, not a deterministic science. The basic fact is destiny as captured by your horoscope. It basically captures the karmas that you have in your pipeline. But the thing is, you keep performing karmas, so new karmas are constantly added to the karmic pipeline. So the destiny is never frozen, it is constantly evolving, and as a result, you can never deterministically predict what will happen to somebody. So astrology is a probabilistic science, and particularly when it comes to nations, we are extrapolating the teachings of rishis. In the case of individuals, we have some clear teachings, but for nations we are extrapolating the teachings of rishis. So there is an inherent risk in making predictions, and particularly predictions in global matters for countries, etc. But still, it is interesting to do, so we astrologers engage in that activity. And before I make some predictions for Ukraine, I want to acknowledge that I tried that without using all the data that was available to me. I tried that in a hurry a couple of weeks back and I got it wrong. I expected that in the February 3rd week there will be some ramping up of emotions and aggressions, but it will basically come under control, and I was wrong. And that is mainly because I did not even consider the chart of Ukraine. I just went by lunar new year charts, etc. So I'll make my best and honest effort in this video, but again it may still go wrong, but I will make my best effort, which I'm afraid I did not do earlier. Before we go into astrology and predictions, at a high level, the Ukraine invasion is a game changer. Superpowers already always use their power to bully other countries, and this is basically not new. And there are some norms, international norms, and superpowers pretend to follow those norms, and basically they push the edges always. US does it, Russia does it, China does it. But the thing is, see, for example, when Russia invaded Crimea and annexed it, and when Russia aided Russian army went into the Donbas region, and basically after that there was rebel activity there, and they got control over that area of Donbas in eastern Ukraine. There was some hue and cry, but not at the same level that we see now. Basically, Russia invading Ukraine, an independent country, and accusing that there is some Nazism, etc. there, etc. This is really an extreme case that we have seen compared to US invasion of Iraq, etc. This is a totally different case. This really pushed the bar on what superpowers do, how ruthless they can be, how they can completely ignore the international norms. And the thing is, this disturbed the status quo between superpowers, between countries like Russia, China and US. There are some unspoken rules. They bully around, but there are some lines that they don't cross with respect to each other. And here, Russia has crossed that line and disturbed the status quo. I know that some people on the internet are excited about this. They think that Russia is teaching a lesson to Ukraine and NATO. But the thing is, this is really serious. They disturb the status quo, and when that happens, things become really unpredictable. And it created a new Cold War between NATO and Russia. And it will be interesting to see how what China does in the coming months and years. In my opinion, clear alliances will develop over the next few months and years between world countries, and there will be a lot of tension that will keep simmering till 2030 or so. And it will lead to a major war in 2030 to 2031. This is the time frame when there are some planetary combinations similar to in Mahabharata, and really serious combinations. I will mention them in the second part of the video where I go through the analysis. But let me first share my expectations in the short term from the Ukraine war. In my opinion, looking at Ukraine's chart, March and early April continue to be a bad time for Ukraine, not just February. So this month and early April are also bad. And I am afraid that the worst is around late March or early April. Previously, I mentioned that Saturn and Mars are exactly conjoined on April 4th. So that happens to be exactly within half degree from the natal moon of Ukraine. So that is really a terrible combination, showing that there will be a lot of anger, a lot of grief, etc. in the country. There can be the violence that we see now can reach peaks that we haven't imagined during that time, late March and early April, closer to April 4th. So unfortunately, I do not expect the war to end quickly. Even though originally, based on my partial analysis, I did not even expect the war to start. Now that I looked at things carefully, I don't expect this to end quickly. And a deal between NATO, Ukraine and Russia, I don't expect it before April 8. And it is most likely in mid-May. But at least till first week of April or so, I don't really expect any cessation of violence. I'm afraid that there may be some windows opened for humanitarian aid, etc. There may be some ceasefire during certain windows. But the war, unfortunately, I expect to continue till the first week of April at least. And most likely in mid-May, there will be some resolution of the crisis. And regarding the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, in some sections of the internet, he has become really popular these days, and his rise of stature, in my opinion, based on his chart, is not temporary. He will have some stature in world politics in the coming years. And if Ukraine, depending on how the war goes, there is a danger to his life. He may be killed or imprisoned, which is actually a very likely outcome, practically speaking. But based on his chart, I don't see a danger to his life. I think that he will survive this and he will come out as a strong leader. The impact on the Russian economy. In the short term, we have seen a lot of impact on the Russian economy. For example, a few days back, ruble fell by, I think, 30% or so. So people are worried about Russian economy simply evaporating. But I, in my assessment, based on Russia's chart, this is only a short-term impact. The pinch will be till around May 20 or so, and Russian economy will start to improve then after that. So they will absorb this pressure and things will improve. Either international committee will relax the sanctions on Russia, or more likely they will have their own alliances and they will get help from their friends. So I expect that Russian economy will be fine after May 20. As a matter of fact, the second half of this year is pretty good for Russian economy. So I'm not thinking that Russia will be badly crippled by the sanctions that the West has imposed on Russia. And as far as NATO is concerned, based on the chart of NATO, this is a problematic time right now. And the current unity that we see among NATO countries against Russia, in my assessment, is short-lived. This won't last a long time. And especially from next year, next April or so, there will be some internal setbacks. There will be some differences of opinion and NATO countries not being on the same page. That is likely to happen from April 2023. And I believe that there will be a Cold War between China-Russia nexus and NATO. And this will go on till 2030 or so, when there will be a major war. And in this skirmish, in this Cold War, I expect that China-Russia axis will have upper hand in the mid-2020s. In the long term, I have a long-standing prediction that more than a decade and a half back, that I predicted in this time frame, in the current time frame, there will be a major geopolitical transformation, once in a millennium kind of geopolitical transformation. And specifically, I mentioned, based on a long-term mundane chart, that the period of a world war and terrible destruction in the world, a major upheaval in the world, is 2020 till 2036. And particularly the key year for a war is 2030-2031. Specifically, November 2030 time frame is really, really crazy. COVID-19 was just the beginning of a chaotic era. Era of chaos, 2020 till 2036. Ukraine invasion is a major game changer coming after COVID, and in my opinion, there will be such disruptions coming one after the other during the next several years, and there will be a major geopolitical transformation over the next decade. And in terms of World War II analogy, I know that a lot of my friends are supporting Russia and they are sympathetic to Russia. I understand that. I'm not taking sides here, but this is what I expect based on their own charts. I expect that US is the new UK. This analogy I mentioned in a September 2021 interview with Infinity Foundation. US is the new United Kingdom. Just like United Kingdom was a falling power, superpower in 1940s and 1950s, US is in the same state in 2020s and 2030s. And Russia is the new Italy, an aggressive power that rises and falls, like Mussolini's Italy of 1930s and 1940s. And China is the new Germany, Hitler's Germany of 1930s and 1940s. Even though we haven't seen anything aggressive from China so far, we will see in the coming decade. And just like Italy and Germany got together and fought UK, Russia and China will get together and they will fight US and US allies, the NATO. And there will be a Cold War between NATO and Russia, China, Iran and North Korea nexus over the next several years, and it will lead to much destruction in the end. And Putin will cause a lot of suffering in the world, but in the end I don't expect Russia to be the winner. And I also expect that once it comes to that phase, the final phase, India and Israel will tip the balance in the end towards this faction. And the thing is, people may be, because I am saying really negative things, people may be worried, how do we deal with it? Unfortunately, there are things we can control and things we can deal with, and there are things out of our control. We basically do our best. We prepare for the worst but hope for the best. That's basically what we can do. And this is something I wrote on Facebook in this post on 2017 April 14. Mother of all wars of this era is now on the way. Due to various collective choices we humans made over the last couple of decades, the arrow has already left the bow of the god of destruction, Rudra basically. I also wrote in the same post, of course, just as night gives way to a new dawn and a bright day, this period of destruction will eventually usher in a new era of sustainable, just and dharmic peace. Humanity will live contented lives in harmony with nature, guided more by a sense of dharma than greed. We have had peace in the last few decades, but this is not sustainable. This is not just. This is not dharmic. This is a peace where we are destroying the earth, very earth on which we are living. So this will not sustain for too long. So the war that I was anticipating, the big war, the mother of all wars, it will actually create a more sustainable earth at the end. So there is some positive, there is some silver lining on the cloud. And what can we do practically? Actually, before that, I think I said fasten your seat belts and be prepared for a rough ride and big disruption to the way of life we are accustomed to. Be creative, resourceful, flexible and adaptive. So this is basically what we can do. If you are anticipating that there may be some disruption to the way we are used to living, we can be more prepared. So be creative, be resourceful and be very flexible. Don't fix your mind on this is how I want my future to be. So develop that flexibility that will help you deal with all the chaos that we have seen in the last few years, and also I'm afraid we will see in the coming years better. So that is one thing. And more importantly, surrender to her. Remove all expectations from mind and take it as it comes. Spend more time in spiritual sadhana if you can. May she have mercy on us, earth dwellers. So on that note, I will end the expectations and predictions part. I will do another video, a more detailed video or set of videos on other related issues like all these nexuses that I mentioned, and China's chart, Russia's chart, Taiwan's chart, etc. I will discuss them in future, but in this video I will focus on Ukraine and why I think 2030 is particularly bad. So that is basically what I am going to do, and I will go through the astrological analysis now, and those who are interested in only predictions can drop off now. Thank you very much. Okay, now we will look at some astrological factors that were behind some of the conclusions I shared earlier. So this is the planetary position right now. You can see that Mars at 5 degree 19 in Capricorn and Venus at 5 degree in Capricorn. There is a Graha Yuddha between Mars and Venus, and Mars is more advanced than Venus. Venus is the planet of peace, whereas Mars is the planet of war. And this has been happening for about 10 days. They had a Graha Yuddha at the end of Sagittarius, and they moved into Capricorn, and they continue to have the Graha Yuddha. So this Graha Yuddha is one of the factors. And right now, if you see Mars and Venus, they are at 5 degree Capricorn. And let us see the chart of Ukraine. Oh, by the way, one more thing we will see. We'll see after this Graha Yuddha is over, Mars will actually have a close conjunction with Saturn, who's at 26 degree Capricorn right now. So if you go to mundane and say when is the next Mars Saturn conjunction after the current date, it is on April 4th, like I said in the initial portion, and they are at 29 degree 23 minutes. So remember that longitude, 29 and a half roughly in Capricorn. And let us look at the chart of Ukraine. When I made the previous video, I assumed that there is no chart of Ukraine, but I found that there is actually a chart. And when the parliament voted to be an independent country from USSR, the time was clearly noted down. So we do have the chart. The official time is August 24, 1991, 6 o'clock, 6 p.m. But by taking 5:56, apparently when everything was tallied, etc., when everybody left, the parliamentarians left, that time was noted, that was 6. So it was a little before, and based on some previous events that happened in Ukraine's short life, I basically rectified it to 5:56. This explains the past better. So this is the chart I am taking for Ukraine. Okay, you can note it down. So if you look at this chart, you see that Saturn, the planet of grief, and also the second and third lords in second house. So a Maraka in this Rashi chart. He is at 8 degree Capricorn. So the current Graha Yuddha between Mars and Venus is approaching this natal Saturn, the planet of grief. So this is not really, this can show a war that causes a lot of suffering. So that's one thing. The other thing is on April 4th, when Mars and Saturn conjoin at 29.5 degrees in Capricorn, you see where the natal moon is. The natal moon, who shows the mood of the country, is at 29.45. So within quarter degree, with less than half a degree, the Saturn-Mars conjunction occurs near natal moon. So that is really a problem. In the case of individuals, if it happens, if Saturn and Mars are exactly conjoined near natal moon, so close to natal moon, there will be a lot of anger, a lot of fights, and a lot of grief, sadness, etc. in the person at that time. And the other thing is, in general, Mars in Sagittarius, especially when he was in Vargotama in Graha Yuddha, that is when the war started. And Mars is a fairy planet and Sagittarius is a fairy sign. So when he is in Vargotama there, in a fairy sign in both Rashi and Navamsha, that is problematic. That is why I was expecting some aggression during that time. But I wrongly assumed that when Mars comes to Capricorn, things will subside. The thing is, even though Capricorn is an earthy sign, it is the sign of exaltation of Mars. As a matter of fact, World War II started when Saturn was in Aries and Mars was in Capricorn. That is when World War II started. Because Mars is really strong when he is exalted. So in any case, here interesting thing is, at the time of World War start, Saturn was debilitated. So Saturn, the planet of restraint, was weak, whereas Mars, the planet of aggression, was strong, and they had mutual aspect. Here they will be conjoined, and both are strong because Saturn is in own sign and Mars is exalted. But in general, exaltation is stronger than own sign, so Mars is stronger. And secondly, in this particular, in the case of Ukraine, this is where the natal moon is. So that is also problematic. So both Saturn and Mars actually cause problems here. When they conjoin Moon, they cause grief and anger. So that is one thing. And the other thing is, let us look at the Tajka chart. By the way, one thing I'll just mention, some people use dasas with the charts of countries and have a philosophical objection to it. So I don't do that. Some people say that Jupiter Venus dasa is running for Ukraine, so that is why there is a war. Well, Venus is the sixth lord of war, so that's fine. But Jupiter is the Lagna lord in 9th house, so why will he? Actually, he is in 8th house, but still he is the Lagna lord. So why will Lagna lord give a major destructive war? And the thing is, during Jupiter dasa, they have been suffering. But forget about that logic. Philosophically, the Paramaisha of countries is not 120 years. Human beings, Paramaisha is 120 years. If you are looking at dogs, elephants, etc., you are supposed to compress or expand the dasa to their Paramayish. And similarly for swearing in charts, we compress the dasa to 4 years or 5 years, the term. And for countries, the Paramayish is definitely longer than human beings. We don't know what it is, but it is definitely longer. Some people may say countries are made of human beings, so their Paramayish should be the same as human beings. That's not logically sound, because if you look at human beings, we are made of cells. And the cells, their Paramayish is very, very short. Cells are very short-lived, but the human beings that are made of those cells live a long time. So similarly, even though human beings are the components making a country, their Paramayish need not be the same. The Paramayish of components need not be the same as the Paramayish of the whole. So bottom line is, for countries, Paramayish is longer. If you look at, for example, US has been in existence for more than 200 years. So from that point of view, I have a philosophical objection to taking dasas, so I don't take dasas, but I do take the annual charts and transits. Transits I have already shown. So I take the Tajka and Tithi charts, and those are still meaningful. And one more thing I do is, just like you do Saturn-Jupiter conjunction charts for mundane readings, the mundane Saturn-Jupiter conjunction charts, you can find when Saturn and Jupiter had the same angle between them as at birth, the angular return chart of Saturn-Jupiter. And you can basically try to see how the next 15 or 20 years will be. So if you do that for Ukraine, you will see that in the Rudramsa chart of wars, you will see that the third house and sixth house contains sixth lord Mars in Mulatrikona. Sixth is very strong, and Jupiter, the second lord, is in third house. He becomes a Marka and he is debilitated and he is afflicted by Rahu. So the Kuruchandal Yoga, so strong combinations. And Jupiter, by the way, even though he is a natural benefic, he acts as he is debilitated here. So effectively it is like two malefics in the third house and another malefic in the sixth house. So this is a period of the strength of third and sixth will show wars, etc. Lot of confrontations, lot of wars during this period. So this is a period of problems. And also 7th and 8th lords, Venus and Mercury, are together. So that's a Marka combination. So there are some serious wars and destruction and death-like suffering during, I'm not sure till when, let me look at, from 2012, this is basically before the Crimea annexation, till 2032. So this 20-year period, it should be 20, Saturn Jupiter conjoin every 20 years. Similarly, they come to the same angle between them every 20 years. So this is a period when there will be lot of destruction and wars. Let us look at the Tajka chart. If you look at Tajka chart of 2021, why am I looking at 2021? Some people added comments in the Yogi Adityanath and Akhilesh Singh Yadav video that I was looking at a wrong year. The thing is, they were born late in the year, but the elections are in March. So to find the right year affecting that election time period, I have to look at 2021 chart. Similarly here, we are looking at early 2022. So August 24, 2021 chart is the one that gives insight. This is active till 2022 August, right? So that is why we are looking at this chart. So if you look at this chart, one thing you see is in the Rashi chart, the fifth lord Venus is in debilitation in the fourth house. So fifth lord is in a quadrant. So fifth lord is so the fifth lord in a quadrant shows lot of patriotism, and Venus is the planet of patriotism, but he is debilitated, so it is under some negative circumstances. Venus shows heavy patriotism under negative circumstances. Look at the Rudramsa chart. if you look at the Rudramsa chart, oh, by the way, let's look at the dasas first. In this, Ketu is strong, and you can see that Navamsa. Let's see the Navamsa chart. In Navamsa, Lagna is in a Venusian sign, and Ketu is strong, the controlling planet of Dvashotri. So Dvashotri applies. It is the strongest dasha in the Rashi chart. So let us look at the Dvadashotri dasha of Rashi chart. So when did the war start? It is happening in the Saturn dasha. Saturn, if you see in this chart, Saturn is the 8th lord in the 8th house. So normally Saturn in 8th is normally not problematic because he is the Ayush Karaka, but 8th lord in the 8th. So basically from the 8th house of Ayush, taking that as Lagna, Saturn is in Manakaraka Sthana. So basically any house that Saturn is in, he weakens that house. So being the 8th lord in the 8th house in retrogression, Saturn Dasha is giving lot of suffering. But of course we have to look at the other charts for more clarity. So let us, just for fun, let us look at the, oh, by the way, so after Saturn Dasha, Moon Dasha comes. And how is Moon Dasha? Moon is the second lord in the, actually if you look at the Bhava Chakra, he's in the 10th house. He's pretty well placed. And 10th house shows good karma. 10th and 9th houses can show international relations and diplomacy also. And he's with Jupiter, even though they are in different houses. Let's see how much distance is between them, 25 degrees and 3 degrees. There's plenty of distance, but still Moon is pretty decently placed. So in this period things can improve. It's not as bad as the Saturn Dasha, even though he's also the Marka, being the second lord. So that is why I expect that in this Dasha, some part of the Dasha will give negative results and some part will give diplomacy, etc., and positive results. But we should really look at Rudramsa. And before we do that, let us look at the Chaturthamsa. And if you look at the Chaturthamsa, D4, the 5th lord, Venus, is exalted. Again, D4 shows land a country owns, land a country identifies with. Basically in human beings charts, it is the properties, right? So in the case of countries, it is their borders and their properties, etc. And 5th house of emotions shows patriotism, etc. And the lord is Venus, so no wonder. By the way, the best dasha here is Vimshotri dasha. But the thing is, because there is a strong planet in Kendra, Venus, we use Tara dasha variation. So take Venus as the seed and look at the Tara dasha, and you see that we have to see D4. So right now there must be some Venus link, and there is. From January 21st till March 21st, Venus Dasha runs based on Tara Dasha with Venus as the seed of D4. So Venus being the 5th lord in the 10th house, there is this strong patriotism in the country. And Venus is also the 12th lord. By the way, this chart, Lagna lord is in the 12th house, afflicted by 6th lord. So there is a Duryoga. And also Sun and Moon are together, 2nd and 3rd lords. Their conjunction is a Marka combination. They are aspecting the Lagna lord. So there are a lot of negative things. So Venus is the 12th lord. So during this period, some loss of the property can also happen. But really, Sun is the problematic dasha. Sun is the 3rd lord joining the 2nd lord Moon. So a couple of weeks later, a few weeks later, maybe 3 weeks later, at the end of March and early April, that is when there can be lot of destruction, lot of cities being taken over by Russia, and lot of losses. So this is a really problematic period. And also I mentioned earlier that Saturn and Mars, as they come closer to the natal moon, because the exact conjunction is on April 4th, so that can be also problematic. So I am afraid that towards the end of March there can be lot of loss of property, lot of destruction, very very depressing events for the people of Ukraine, and also Russia taking over more land during that time is possible. Let us look at the Rudramsa now, the chart of wars. Is there an indication of war in this chart? The 7th house of relationships, the Lord's Sun is afflicted by Ketu in Lagna, and the 7th house contains Mars Rahu combination, and Mars is also the third lord of fighting, etc. initiative to fight. So there are some interesting combinations, and the best dasha here is Sun is in Lagna, Shashtihini applies. Controlling planet Moon is strong because of the parivartana between Moon and Jupiter. Moon acts as though he is in one sign. So let's use the Shashtihini dasha of D11, Rudramsa, the chart of fights and wars, conflicts. Okay, so Mars dasha is running right now. Mars dasha is running, and Mars Rahu, like I said, Mars is the third lord in 7th and he is afflicted by Rahu. So this is indeed a problematic dasha. After this, Moon dasha runs, and Moon is also the 6th lord. Even though he is not afflicted like Mars, he is the 6th lord. So 6th lord is unlikely to give a break from the fight. And then Mercury, even though he is the 5th lord, he is also the 8th lord in Badhakasthana. So it's unlikely that these dashas are problematic. So in Mercury dasha, because he is the 5th lord and in the 9th house, maybe there is some hope. That is why I think that there can be some progress in April, but I am really looking at May, after May 19. If you look at Venus is Yokaraka and he is in the 3rd house. So a benefic in the 3rd house doesn't give fights. He basically gives cessation of fights. So that is why I am looking at Venus dasha as the dasha that can actually bring an end to the fights and a treaty, a deal between NATO, Ukraine and Russia. And let us quickly look at the Navamsa before we move on. I think, okay, we have to move quickly. Look at the Navamsa. In the Navamsa chart, you will see that Mars is the 7th lord in Lagna, 2nd and 7th lord, a Maraka, he is in Lagna, and Jupiter and Ketu, you see 3rd lord Jupiter and 2nd lord Ketu are together, and that is a Maraka combination. And the 8th house contains, 8th house of disturbance in relations with other countries contains Moon, Saturn, Rahu. But the good thing is Venus, Saturn give a Raj Yoga also. So there is some Lagna Lord and Yokaraka, Saturn, 4th and 5th Lord. So there is some positive relations with other countries also. But overall, this is a very problematic Navamsa. So there will be some problems in the relations with other countries. But of course, the actual war is better seen in the Rudramsa than Navamsa. Now let us look at the chart of Zelensky, Volodymyr Zelensky, the young president of Ukraine. So this is the chart. The A-rated birth data on Astro Data Bank is with 2 p.m. not 2:04 but 2 p.m. and the rest is basically, this is A-rated on Astro Data Bank, supposed to be accurate. But based on his life, based on how things happened in his life, I rectified it to 2:04 p.m. instead of 2 p.m. So Lagna, instead of being at the end of Taurus, it is at the beginning of Gemini, with Jupiter close to Lagna. So this is the Rashi chart of the person, and if we see his dashas in the Rashi chart, let us see the Dvisaptati Samadasya. Why? Because 7th lord is in Lagna, and the controlling planets for Dvisaptata Samadasya is Rahu. He is in Virgo, he is strong, he is in Mulatrikona. So Dvisaptata Samadasya of Rashi chart, if we see for the physical matters, you see that Jupiter dasha from 1999 to 2008, Jupiter is the 10th lord, so a lot of career basically takes off during that time. He started his career as a comedian in, I think, mid 90s and late in the 90s and 2000s. He was a comedian on TV, as well as he was a director and producer. So Jupiter dasha shows focus on career, and then Venus dasha came, and Venus is the 5th lord, so he is in the 8th house, and the 5th lord gives fame, and in the 8th house he gives sudden fame. So during this period he became really famous. I think particularly in 2015 he was the star of a TV show, a popular TV show where he played the president of the country. So he became very popular during that time. So Venus gave popularity, and then Saturn, he is the 9th lord. Though he is 8th lord, he is also the 9th lord, and he is in the 3rd house. So 9th lord in the 3rd house aspecting 9th house will give fortune during the period. So this is overall a good period, and being the 8th lord in the 3rd house, If the 8th lord is in 7th house, it will become a marka, but the lord of the house of longevity in the house of vitality. So he can give a lot of troubles and fights being in the 3rd house, but I don't anticipate that he will lose his life. So I think that he will survive this phase. And also after that Rahu Dasha comes, and Rahu is the 9th lord of fortune in the 4th house. He is very well placed. So Rahu Dasha is also a good Dasha for him. And if we quickly look at his Dasamsa, and in the Dasamsa, the best applicable Dasha is Shorshotri Dasha. So if you see Shorshotri Dasha of Dasamsa, and I will let you figure out why. The condition applies and Jupiter is exalted, the controlling planet. So in this chart, you will see that he is running the Dasha of Venus, right? So Venus is the 5th lord in the 9th house. There is a parivartana between Venus and Saturn, the 5th lord and 9th lord. So this is a pretty good Dasha. And this Dasha gave him first fame as an actor, and later fame as a leader, etc. So this is a very good Dasha for him. So I expect that he will continue at least till 2026. His stature and fame will continue. Now let us look at the chart of Russia. Where is Russia chart? I thought I had it. Okay, if we look at the chart of Russia, this is the chart of Russia. Let us quickly jump to the Tajika chart of 2021. The annual solar return chart of 2021. Let us see the. I talked about their. Oh, by the way, let us look at relations with other countries. If you see the Navamsa chart of relations with other countries, you see that Lagna Lord Venus is in the 4th house, and Lagna Lord and 8th Lord Venus is in Samsaptaka with Badaka Lord Sun, and Rahu is in 6th house. So Rahu is really strong in the 6th house. So when Rahu is in the 6th house, the way you relate with others, the way you deal with other countries is with a lot of aggression and lot of force. So this is basically forceful foreign policy shown by him. And the 3rd Lord Jupiter and the 2nd Lord Mars, 2nd and 7th Lord Mars. The Mars is a Maraka, by the way. So he and the 3rd Lord Jupiter are afflicting Mercury. Mercury is the 9th Lord. 9th house shows your foreign policy, your diplomacy, etc. with other countries. So Saturn is afflicting that house, but he is Yokaraka. So I think eventually some restraint and diplomacy will come. But the Lord of the house, Mercury, who's afflicted by Mars and Jupiter, he shows a foreign policy that is, by the way, Jupiter also owns 3rd and 6th house of aggression against other countries. So the foreign policy will be guided by aggression and aggression against other countries, etc. Let us look at the Dashas. The best applicable Dasha is Shatrimsa Samadasha. From Sun, actually let's not go through the applicability, but by the way, you can see that the condition applies, but why the controlling planet Mercury, is he strong? Well, there is a parivartana between Ketu and Mercury. Ketu also owns Scorpio, so that is why Mercury acts as though he is in one house, and the condition applies. So we are using the Shatrimsa Samadasha of Navamsa in this chart. So if you see that, how are things? So Jupiter Dasha was January 22 till February 21st, and Jupiter is the 3rd and 6th Lord. So some aggressive posturing in the foreign policy is expected, and that indeed happened. And then Mars is the 2nd and 7th Lord. He is a Marka, so he is a killer for relations with other countries, and also he is the planet of war and aggression, and he is in Scorpio, the shady sign. So during this period, February 21st to April 2nd, there was war, etc. War strained the relations with other countries, and especially this is the 2nd house, so it strained the financial relations with the other countries. Then Mercury Dasha will come from April 2nd till May 23rd. And Mercury is the ninth lord. Even though he is afflicted, ninth lord in the second house of speech, acting as though he's in one house, he is favorable for having some kind of deal. So I expect that after April 2nd or so, there can be some talks and some progress. By the way, Mercury is also the planet of negotiations. So I strongly expect that this is the period when there will be some negotiations and some deal made. So probably a deal. I can't really narrowly time it, but most likely based on the Rudramsa of Ukraine, I think it is in mid-May, so May 19, May 23 time frame probably. But it is theoretically possible anytime after April 2nd, but it's very unlikely till April 2nd. And let's look at the Hora chart. Let's look at the finances. And here, Jupiter is in Mula Trikona and the Shodashotri Dasha conditions apply. So we will use the Shodashotri Dasha of Hora chart, T2. In this chart, okay, let us see the Dasha. What is the Dasha running right now? Mercury Dasha. So Mercury is the third and sixth lord. Let's also look at the Hora chart, Bhavachakra based on Hora chart. So Mercury is the third. Oh, actually, he's in the seventh house. So sixth lord in the sixth would have been unafflicted, would have been not a bad yoga. It's basically Harsha yoga. But third and sixth lord of debts, etc., being in the seventh house of relations with others. So that's not really positive. So this is a period when there will be debts with other countries and there can be some transaction problems, financial transaction problems. Because financial transactions with other countries are based on the seventh house and he is the sixth lord of denying the transactions. So sixth house can show either loans as well as denying transactions from others. Because 7th is interacting with others on financial matters. 12th from there is either denying it or it is the 12th basically getting. So either way, some problem relating to interactions with others in financial matters. So Mercury is a problematic period. So indeed in this period there was all this mess happened, all these sanctions, etc., and also taking them off SWIFT financial transaction system, all that happened. Then Venus Dasha will come. How is Venus? He is, if you look at the chart, he is a Maraka and he is in the 9th house. He is not particularly good. So Venus Dasha is not really a good Dasha. So I don't expect a lot of relief then. And Sun Dasha. Sun is the 5th lord and he is in 6th house. So 5th lord in 6th gives Dhimanta Yoga. And also he is in own sign here. So Sun Dasha is a very favorable Dasha. So I expect that after May 20, things will be much better. Russian economy will recover during that time. And Mars is the Lagna Lord. So again, nothing problematic. And Jupiter is particularly good, August-September time frame, because he is the 9th Lord in the 9th house. So I don't expect that Russian economy will collapse, even though that is what NATO may be hoping for. Russian economy will survive this. They will find new friends or the sanctions will be relaxed or as a part of the deal, but Russia will be fine. And finally, what I want to do is I mentioned about the possibility of a war in 2030. So I will talk about this in detail in future videos, multiple videos about China, Russia, Taiwan, etc., Iran, etc. But in this case, in this video, I just want to show one specific combination. So if you look at November, let's say 20 tentatively, 2030. So if you make a chart for this 2030, November 20 or so, you will see that there are 5 planets in Scorpio and 2 planets in Taurus, and they are all aspecting each other. And if you look at the longitudes here, Saturn is at, this is not an exact date when war will happen or anything, but just look at a sample date, because it's November time frame, basically October, November, December time frame is problematic. Saturn is at around 13 degrees Taurus. Ketu is at 14 degrees Taurus. So within 1 degree, Saturn and Ketu are conjoined. And what nakshatra is it? It is Rohini. Saturn in Rohini is known to cause problems. For example, the 2001 September 11 event happened when Saturn was in Rohini. And if you go back, you will see Saturn in Rohini is problematic. But here is not just Saturn in Rohini. It is Saturn in Rohini with Ketu, closely conjoined with Ketu. And Jupiter and Rahu also closely conjoined. 13 degrees Jupiter, 14 degrees Rahu. So there is a Guru Chandala Yoga. Guru and Rahu closely conjoined, and Saturn Ketu closely conjoined. And they are aspecting each other, all of them, and multiple planets join them around that time. So this is really problematic and very similar to some combinations that occurred at the time of Mahabharata war in 3067 BCE. So this is one of the factors, but there are others. I talked about a long-term mundane chart in the past, so that is also another factor, but I will cover that in a future video. I've already gone on for half hour, so this is what I expect. Oh, one more thing is, in my last video I talked about the possibility that China may attack Taiwan. I still think at the end of March and in early April, apart from what is already going on, there may be some new complications involving China, possibly in the Southeast China Sea, possibly involving Taiwan. But I want to I don't want to hurry. I want to take a deeper look at the Taiwan and China charts, and I will make another video on that. But I wanted to basically focus on Ukraine war and its fallout in this video. So that is all I wanted to cover today. Hopefully in another week or so, I will come up with another video on China, Taiwan possibilities. Okay. Thank you very much. Om Tat Sat Sarvam Sri Krishnarpanamastu. Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Sarve Jana Sukhino Bhavantu. यावत् भूमण्डले सनातनधर्मो वर्धतु विशेषतः भरतखण्डे अमेरिकावर्षे टिबेट् राष्ट्रे च ॐ शान्ति 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 May there be just dharmic and sustainable peace in world soon. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you.